And Marjorie Taylor Greene expresses frustration with President Trump for hosting the new Syrian dictator at the White House, while the U.S. economy continues to tank. Georgia Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene on Monday expressed frustration with President Trump for hosting Syrian President al-Sharaa at the White House, amid, of course, the ongoing persecution of the Syrian Christians. With the help of intel agencies from various foreign governments, the U.S., including al-Sharaa, they triumphed in the Syrian civil war earlier this year. He ousted Assad, and the government, they seized Damascus. And al-Sharaa's group, HTS for short, it's an offshoot of al-Qaeda and also ISIS. And Marjorie Taylor Greene, she said this, quote, "The new leader of Syria is a former al-Qaeda terrorist wanted by our government who is meeting with President Trump today at the White House on the U.S. Marines' 250th anniversary." He rose to power in December of 2024. Sanctions were lifted off Syria in June, and many Christians and minority groups have been killed before and after sanctions were lifted, end quote. And then she added this, quote, "Syria is the oldest home of Christianity outside of Israel. The Apostle Paul met Jesus on the road to Damascus. I pray the persecution ends, not only in Syria, but all around the world," end quote. Well, Christians, they were generally supportive of the Assad government during the civil war. And the HTS victory, it saw widespread attacks on Christian communities in various regions of Syria, no doubt about it. In fact, Congresswoman Greene further expressed her frustration with the White House and, is really a recent string of foreign meetings. Here's what she said, quote, "I would really like to see nonstop meetings at the White House on domestic policy, not foreign policy, and foreign countries' leaders," end quote. Well, she has a point. There seems to be an awful lot of attention being focused on foreign policy and not much on solving America's economic problems. And then when the White House rolls out as a solution a 50-year mortgage, that went over like a lead balloon. And then they say that inflation has been brought under control, that ship has been righted. Again, that didn't go over well on social media. Well, now Marjorie Taylor Greene, we all know she's been a big supporter of President Trump, but something has changed in the last few months. She's not happy, and many of the MAGA base members aren't either. But she's issuing a warning to President Trump, and I think he'd be smart to pay attention to what she's advising. Because if he continues to gaslight his base, he's going to end up losing many of them. And the result will be catastrophic. Catastrophic losses in the 2026 midterms. And then, of course, there's 2028, which many presidents see as, after 2 terms, the continuation of their administration and legacy. The bloodbath that we saw last week in the elections, that should not be ignored. I know people say, that was blue states, blue cities. Well, we lost a governorship in Virginia that was a Republican. We need more action in solving our domestic economic issues. I think this talk about a 50-year mortgage, and I'm even hearing talk of a 50-year car loan, all that's got to stop. It's not the answer to anything. And it sends the wrong message. Holocaust survivors are warning that the levels of anti-Semitism in the post-October 7th era are comparable to the pre-Holocaust Jew hatred in 1938. All Israel News has posted an article that reports on this global trend of increasing Jew hatred. They cited several elderly Jews who lived through Hitler's Holocaust, and they helped them get a feel for how it felt then versus now. The 100-year-old Holocaust survivor, Walter Bingham, he warned in a recent interview with the Associated Press, quote, "We live in an era equivalent to 1938, where synagogues are burned and people in the street are attacked," end quote. He was 14 years old when the Nazi mobs plundered and destroyed Jewish shops and synagogues in Germany and Austria during the night of the broken glass. The Nazis, they set fire to more than 1,400 synagogues, and they vandalized 7,500 Jewish businesses. Some 30,000 Jewish men were arrested and sent to concentration camps. Bingham was saved through the Kindertransport Rescue Mission from Germany to England in the 1930s. But he was separated from his parents, who perished during the Holocaust. He stated, quote, "Anti-Semitism, I don't think will ever fully disappear because it's the panacea for all ills of the world," end quote. The article goes on to say that despite the similarities between contemporary Jew hatred and anti-Semitism in the 1930s, there are also significant differences. Bingham said, quote, "In those days, the Jewish mentality was apologetic. Please don't do anything to me. I won't do anything to you." That's what he explained. But he said the emergence of the Jewish state has dramatically changed the power dynamic, giving Jewish people confidence that they won't face something like the Holocaust again. Here's what he said, quote, "Today, we have, thank God, the state of Israel, a very strong state. And whereas anti-Semitism is still on the increase, one thing that will not happen would be a Holocaust, because the state will see to it that doesn't happen," end quote. Daniel Greenfield reports in an article at jihadwatch.org that a group of Muslim teens are spreading hatred against Jews and viciously attacking them online. Milo Sarat, the 19-year-old son of a noted Iranian-American poet, he raged online about how he wanted to carry out mass execution of Jews. He says he wanted to run over people at a pro-Israel demonstration in Montclair, New Jersey. That's according to a complaint filed by the U.S. Attorney's Office in New Jersey that was unsealed last Thursday. According to those court documents, Sarat said, quote, "I can't wait for the day I get to execute like 10 Yahud," end quote, using what investigators say is an Arabic term for Jewish people. He went on to write, quote, "Line up like 500 Jews and execute them in front of their wives and family. Then take all their wives as slaves. Ima have like 10 Yahud slave girls, inshallah," end quote. That last word, inshallah, is the Arabic term for God willing. Greenfield asked this question, quote, "Where would he have gotten that idea?" The Quran. Milo was literally repeating what Muhammad did, end quote. During a direct message exchange in January, authorities said that Sarat made comments like, quote, "Filthy rat Jews need to be eliminated," end quote, and quote, "I'm the biggest anti-Semite in America," end quote. Well, a few months later, he followed that up with the proclamation that, quote, "Everyone hates the Jews now," end quote, and quote, "I hope a second Holocaust happens to them," end quote. Last November, Sarat allegedly expressed to a friend that he feared his mother might somehow stumble upon his hateful messages, and said he tipped his hand by telling her that her Jewish friends deserve to die. He also claimed his mother's Jewish friends were brainwashing her into being a Zionist, and said he was going to, quote, "stab them with my sword," end quote. Sarat's father, Roger, is an award-winning Iranian-American poet and a professor at Queens College in New York City. College Fix reports that Moody Bible Institute, an evangelical Protestant college in Illinois, filed a lawsuit Tuesday alleging the Chicago public school system is discriminating against its student teachers because of its Christian mission. Alliance Defending Freedom attorney Jeremiah Claus stated in a news release, quote, "Chicago desperately needs more teachers to fill hundreds of vacancies. But public school administrators are putting personal agendas ahead of the needs of families," end quote. According to the college's lawyers, the Chicago Board of Education and Chicago Public Schools refuse to employ student teachers from Moody's elementary education program. The reason is the district's non-discrimination policy. ADF News release states that fact. Following the policy would mean that Moody must abandon, quote, "its religiously based hiring practices," end quote. That's according to the news release. Previously, the Christian college asked the school district to amend the policy and recognize, quote, "its rights as a religious institution," end quote. But Chicago Public Schools refused, again, according to the press release. Well, this amounts, of course, to religious discrimination. So said their attorney, Gallus. Quote, by excluding Moody from its religious beliefs, Chicago Public Schools is illegally injecting itself into a religious nonprofit's hiring practices, which the Constitution and state laws expressly forbid, end quote. Just the News reports that the Democrat Socialists of America helped deliver their fellow comrade to the New York City office of mayor, Zohran Mamdani. As we know, he won last Tuesday. Now, the Democrat Socialists of America, well, they have some demands, and he's starting his policies when it comes to Israel. He is, of course, a self-described socialist, and he is going to be there at the nerve center of capitalism, the nerve center of capitalism for America and the world. In fact, Just the News has obtained internal plans from the DSA dealing on how the organization's New York City branch intends to pressure the new mayor into injecting extreme anti-Israel policies into the management and life of the Big Red Apple. Now I call it the Big Red Apple. Mamdani, of course, we know he's been a long-time DSA member and leader, and he is indeed listed as one of the group's 9 New York State socialists that's, well, already in office. And now he's going to go to the big office in New York City. The DSA, of course, helped him win. Not just the mayor's office, but they helped him win the Democrat primary back in June. And he was running and trying to distance himself a little bit from the DSA's socialist and revolutionary platform to a degree. In fact, that's something that, according to Politico, the New York City branch of the socialist group gave him public cover to do. In fact, a website called New York Socialist in Office says that it is a group of, quote, DSA-endorsed elected officials that works together in the New York State legislature to advance a socialist vision for working class people across our state, end quote. The website, well, it names Mamdani as one of their own. And now a recently unearthed clip from 2023, it shows Mamdani telling the DSA at their national conference, I quote, when the boot of the NYPD is on your neck, it has been laced by the IDF, end quote. So now he doesn't have to pretend anymore. He doesn't have to distance himself. He can fully embrace his anti-Israel, Islamic, cultural jihadist worldview. That's what I believe. And I think that's what he's going to do. I think he'll also make many in the DSA very happy. And I don't think they're going to have to distance themselves from him at all now that he has won.